And then I had 2 days in the hospital where everyone was taking care of me and someone... Basically, John was out. Turned out it was a boy. I was convinced it was going to be a girl. I felt like everything pointed towards it being a girl, superstitiously. So we had a good laugh when we realised that there was a little pee-pee down there. And then, you know, I looked around, realised the water was kind of manky. And they said to me, well, we need to get the afterbirth out. Do you want to stay in the water or get out of the tub? And I was feeling a bit chilly too, to be honest. The water was getting a bit cold. I've been in there for a while. So I told them I wanted to get out. I climbed out, got onto a bed. They talked to me. I held my baby for a bit, and then they took him away to weigh him and clean him up and everything. And while they were doing this, they were massaging my stomach, trying to get the you know, everything to come out, and it just didn't want to. So then they started tugging, and I remember as they were tugging me saying, no, 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 and then it came out, and, oh, thank you. Which they seemed to find quite funny. And then finally I was done, and my husband was on the phone to his dad and then his mum, telling them that they had a grandson called John, Alfred. And then we were calling my parents, although I don't really like talking to people 2 minutes after I gave birth. I'm just like, ugh, I'm tired, leave me alone. So, and basically my husband actually had a meeting that he was due to get to at 9 AM, and this was, I don't know, 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. So he said, well, are you going to be okay? I really have to do this meeting. So he dashed home while I stayed in the hospital with John. And he went and had his video conference, and then he came back with my mum and my firstborn around lunchtime with some snacks from my favourite restaurant. And it was all mostly a very positive experience. Now, a couple of things I want to talk about just at the end here is, so this was my first hospital birth. My first birth was in my own home, and it wasn't a very positive experience, but there were a few advantages to it. And one of them was when I was in the hospital, you know, they wanted to do this thing daily where the paediatricians, there's like 3 of them for the hospital wing, come in, and they want to look at all of the newborns at the same time. So what they would do is they'd tell the mums, okay, you take a shower and look after yourself and eat your breakfast, and we'll just take your baby through for 20 minutes into the nursery room with all the other babies, and we'll, you know, get the doctor to check them out, and you just have a bit of time to yourself. Well, my husband was not on board with this idea of me being separated from my baby. I mean, I know it sounds a bit nuts to be worried about your babies being mixed up at birth, but you know, that stuff does happen. You know, we could be the ones. So I insisted on coming with my baby to make sure that he was okay. And, you know, because they said, oh, you know what your baby looks like. I'm thinking, well, I only gave birth to him about 6 hours ago. No, I don't really know what he looks like. I wasn't even wearing my glasses when I was giving birth. So I followed him, and one of the doctors said, oh, what's this woman doing here? And she said, oh, well, she doesn't trust us to look after her child. I'm thinking, I don't even know your name. Why would I trust you? So that wasn't particularly pleasant, the way that they pushed me to be separated from my baby. And they were like, oh, well, he's got a little wristband on him so we can't mix him up. And I'm like, what? The wristband that comes off? Because it did, you know, it wasn't tight at all. I thought, forget it, I'm following. I don't care if you don't like me. I met you 5 minutes ago, and I'm probably never going to see you again, so fine. You don't have to like me, but this is my responsibility. So that was one thing that I just wanted to mention. But, you know, there was no way they could stop me following, so I just stuck up for myself and did it. Another thing I wanted to mention is that I had a little bit of postnatal contractions with my first child, but it wasn't too bad. But every time they say that you have a baby, it becomes stronger and stronger. So I was in quite a lot of pain regularly, especially when I was nursing John, because that stimulates the oxytocin, which stimulates the, well, basically contractions that help you, you know, scale back down to your original size slowly. So this was quite painful, and I had this idea, this bright idea, that it would help me with the pain if I could take my electrical blanket and put it against my stomach while I was sitting, you know, in my bed in the hospital. It turns out this is not a good idea. You know, those electrical blankets are amazing for tons of problems and pains, but it turns out that the heat stimulates contractions. So it actually makes the pain worse. So when a very knowledgeable midwife came in and saw how much pain I was in, and then she noticed I was using the electrical blanket, she said, take it off right now, don't use it, it's making it worse. And then she gave me some painkillers, and thank you. So those are the two things I want to talk about. And all in all, the birth took, I think total, from semi-mild contractions to John being out of me, about 14 hours, and probably about 5 hours of intense labour. You know, I hear these stories about labours that take half an hour, like my sister with her second birth, but there are often a lot of complications that come along with such a quick birth. So having a birth that was this kind of regulated, escalation of pains and all that kind of thing, it actually worked really well for me. You know, it was about the right medium. And they do say that second births do tend to go that way, that they tend to be easier going, like, you know, a bit more like clockwork and fairly quick, but, you know, basically how a birth should go. So that was my super positive birth experience with my laid-back child, John. And then I had 2 days in the hospital where everyone was taking care of me, and someone else was taking care of my firstborn, and I didn't have to hear his whining. I love the kid, but, you know, he's a bit of a whiny kid. And it was so nice. It was so nice. When you've got more kids, having that time in the hospital where someone else is watching your kids and you're just there snuggling your baby and napping whenever you can. So good. So don't knock it until you try it. I loved it. And that's my birth story for John. I hope you gained something from it, some tips, and I'll put a link below to some information about the tea that I was talking about. It's a particular thing in Austria that people like. Apparently it's traditional Austrian midwifery that somehow has made it into the hospitals even over here, which is pretty cool. So, thanks. Bye!